We're recording and we are live on Facebook. So whenever you want to start, we're ready to go. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you again. And we have been so pleased with the responses that we've received from all of you regarding these preschool workshops that we've been doing. We decided that, especially at this time when there's so much that's unknown, we just really need to find ways to help each other. And we have the last of our August workshops today, and I'd like to just refresh for you the 5 that we have done so far. We had the first workshop on how to adapt your schedule or ideas on bringing your students in and not always present, and some kind of a hybrid model. And then our next workshop was on keeping the system working together to make sure that all of the systems are coordinated. And then the next workshop was one on curriculum. And I think probably the thing about curriculum that stands out in my mind most is that we don't need to think in terms of changing the curriculum. We need to think in terms of changing the delivery of curriculum. And last week we had a great workshop with the whole emphasis on the internet and online and how to deal with students in that way. And today we're really pleased to present the 5th one for August. And the whole idea today, and I'll be introducing our main guest in just a few minutes, but it's how do you maintain a positive school climate, which could be during a very negative time. And if the negative is something that is out of our control. And we've talked with Danny a little bit, and we're all talking about how different teachers, different parents, different students all receive these issues differently. And so we have to be prepared to accept students for where they are, parents for where they are, teachers for where they are. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit. But before we begin with Danny Eichelberger, I'll introduce him in a minute. I'm pleased again to introduce Dr. Jake Frankham, who is the Associate Director for Array Global. And Dr. Jake will just bring a few words to us.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and see so many dear friends and mutual educators, and great to be able to share these words of wisdom and this guidance as you are opening up your schools. I had the opportunity of opening up my schools this past week, and it is a chore. It's a lot of work, but after the week is over, I was very, very happy with how everything went, and we're just glad that we could have Danny on this time to be able to share some of his thoughts and ideas on how to make this even more effective as many of you are opening or opening up soon schools. I just want to talk about a couple different things. The first thing is we are going to be hosting monthly workshops, and I think Dr. Ray is going to mention this too, but our next workshop is September 19th. It's going to be at 9 o'clock Saudi time. And Dr. Ray and I are actually going to be the presenters. We're going to be presenting about quality education and quality schools and how to deal with that during a crisis. And so we're really excited about making this presentation to you. September 19th, this was sent out in the email to everyone. From last week, we already have many, many people that are signing up. So please make sure that you sign up. It'll be in your email again at the conclusion of this workshop. Also, some of you have signed up. We have a couple dozen people who have already signed up for Array Global's annual worldwide conference that's going to be held in Switzerland, March 3rd to March 5th. Beautiful, beautiful area. We're excited to be able to do our annual conference there. And we encourage you to sign up. And also, that link for registration is also going to be in the email that I send to everyone. And then another thing is the Olympiads. We've had a couple people sign up for that. Several people sign up for our Olympiads, which we're excited to present. And October 10th is going to be the first day of our Olympiads. So please make sure that you get on, register, get your students involved. This is a great way to connect with schools and individuals across the world, like we are tonight. We're talking to people from all over the world, and it's a great opportunity for your students to also be involved in that. Two different things as far as the workshop goes. If you do have a question or a comment, please put that in the chat box. Dr. Ray and I will be monitoring that. And when there's a theme coming through those chat comments there, we will be asking that question to Danny if we do have some time to be able to do that. So please add your question, comments there in the chat. There's always some great thoughts and ideas, and this is a great opportunity for us to all learn. There's a few comments already that said that their audio is not working. You might want to log off and log back on, or you might want to go down into the bottom left-hand corner where it has a microphone icon. Go to the settings and turn it up there, or make sure that you have the correct speaker selected. Like Dr. Ray said, I want to just talk briefly about Array Global and who we are. And I know I've gone over this a little bit every single time we've met. And I just want to make sure that you know who we are and what we do. We have a lot of different services that we provide to schools. We can provide services to schools now, consulting services as you set up your pandemic plans as you return to school, and we'd be happy to do that through our consulting services. One of the biggest things that we provide are accreditation services. We accredit kindergarten through grade 12 schools, primary schools, middle schools, high schools, international schools. We even accredit national schools or public schools. One item also is we accredit post-secondary schools if they're vocational or career schools. So we're excited about that. So please check out our website, review what we have, and see if there's something that we can help you with there. There have been a lot of questions about our distance-based education program. Now, Mr. George presented about it last week a little bit, and it's a great program, especially during this pandemic where there's so much that's required that's online, and it can be integrated into so many different components. And we'd love to be able to get on a Zoom call with you, your staff members, your administration, talk a little bit more about the distance-based program. And so with that, Dr. Ray, I think that's everything that I have to go over. Yeah, welcome,
Great.
everyone.
And just one thing that I just saw on the screen at the last there is the tree test external assessment. We have contracted with Tree Test that can provide the external assessment, which all schools are required to do. So be sure to check that out on our website. I think you'll find the cost of it is very reasonable, and it's a way to follow through on your students. And one other thing I'd like to add to what Dr. Jake said, I have it on my notes to say at the end, but I want to say it again right now so we don't forget. The workshops, monthly workshops that we're going to do in September, October, November, and December, we want to know what are some subjects that you would like us to feature in a workshop. If there's something we haven't covered that you would say, hey, could you do a workshop on X? I just saw somebody ask a question, and maybe that's the kind of thing. So be sure that you let us know, because we will design the workshops on what you need. We could give workshops on a lot of different areas, but we want to make sure that we're addressing the needs that you see.
And can I mention also, can I interrupt? Sorry, Ray.
Well, I interrupted you, so why shouldn't you interrupt me?
That's true. Well, let me just also mention about that feedback about these workshops. When everyone does their survey today at the very end of this workshop, the post-conference survey, there are some additional questions so we can see what kind of interests there are. And about those monthly workshops, those again are free, and every month we're going to be providing a certificate to those people who are involved. So I think that's a good point about that. I forgot to mention also about accreditation. If your school is accredited with a viable accrediting body, we will transfer them over to our accrediting body for free. And that was probably something you were going to mention, Dr. Ray, so sorry about that.
Great. So the other handsome gentleman up here is Mr. Danny Eichelberger. We've worked with Danny, and he's been in several of your schools and your country, and has been a tremendous asset to the schools where he has been. Danny is the principal of Goolsby Elementary School in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's a K-5 school. And they have about 750 students in kindergarten through grade 5. Recently they have been designated a 5-star blue ribbon school. This is a very high honor, and it's based on student performance, teacher performance, the school climate, the school culture, and a whole bunch of things like that. To get this designation, for those of you who understand, it's kind of like the good housekeeping seal of approval. And Danny is the principal of this school and has led his staff to a very, very successful program. And so today, as I mentioned earlier, the purpose of this workshop today is, with all of these things we've been dealing with, how do you maintain a positive climate with all of the difficulties that we're going through? And we were talking a bit before, we always have a short conference before we come on with you, both with Dr. Jake and with Danny. And I know, for instance, in Denver, where I'm located, they opened 2 different schools. They found that they had some COVID cases. They had to put everybody home for 2 weeks. And so everybody is reacting differently to this. So we really are pleased to have Danny lead the discussion today. And I'm going to turn it over to him. Danny, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to have you with us. It's an honor to have Danny as one of our consultants, if you've looked on our webpage, and he's available. And I think even at the end of his presentation, he's going to give you his email address. So Danny, welcome, and thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lindley, and thank you, Mr. Frankum. I saw a question in the chat box, and it said, lots of parents do not believe that online teaching is effective, just like normal day teaching. How can we convince them? So that's a good question. So my only time out in front of this is that I've had a week with my school and my students and my parents. So I've had a little bit of time to process what the complaints, what the concerns were from a parent perspective. The community that I serve in is a very active community. They would like their children back in school. And our school district opted to have full-time virtual learning. And so there are no students in the building. Teachers can come to the building or they can work from home. They have to be obviously effective in their job, and they have to be able to perform the responsibilities of their job. So that's been the exact issue we've dealt with. So I have a community that doesn't support this. They want to be in school, and they're questioning. So I will tell you, after week 1, and we're just kind of tying this back to culture, it was a tough week for teachers. It was probably some of the highest stress, because almost the building became inverted. The newer teachers that were comfortable with technology, they really flourished. They almost had less stress because they could navigate the technology very easily. Our veteran teachers, they really struggled, and these are master level teachers. The process of getting students in and the stress of making sure that their product was what they were putting out was very polished. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. So a lot of what I want to talk about today is, how do we communicate to parents that we are going to continue to give them that high quality education? How do we calm our staff and let them know that they're going to be effective? And how do our students do? And I would tell you, in this process, students have been the biggest winners in all of this. Our students have surprised me. They have stayed online. They have very rarely wanted to leave the screen. Even in open forum learning, most students have decided to stay, and they want to be in every part of the session. And I thought that was interesting, because the requirement in our district was that a student would stay on and engaged for 60 to 90 minutes in the elementary K through 2nd grade. And in grades 3 through 5, the expectation was 90 to 120 minutes of instruction. And that's sort of like the district's maximum for what screen time a student should be involved with. And what we found, and one of the learning curves we had, is that students weren't leaving the screen. They missed their teacher so much after, being away from school for so long, that every minute they could be with the teacher, they were with them. And that created a little bit of issue for teachers, because we're starting to wear our teachers out, because they were actually in front of students longer than they would be in a normal day. And as you know, the biggest burnout for teachers is, you're constantly thinking and communicating and trying to help execute some learning for students on a higher level. It really is, it starts to be a tiring process. So to answer the original question is, how do we convince parents? It's by being prepared day one and having a really robust, strong teachers engaging with students, and having a really set schedule. And I have a presentation I want to share with that. And so the quickest thing that I found were teachers in the spring, for us, it was really minimal. It was checking in each week and providing some mini lessons. Well, obviously we've all had time to get prepared now, and we were ready to teach on a full day schedule. So the biggest thing our parents are now, we've got them believing that we can do this. And now we've got parents saying, oh, that's just, for us, it's a little bit stressful. It's a lot of screen time. And so we've had to back off a little bit. And I'd say as a principal, I would rather have to back off a little bit than to start slow and then have to pick up speed. So, and maybe when we get through this presentation, we can talk about, if you haven't started, what your first week can look like, and how to avoid some pitfalls. And that's probably the number one thing. I like that as a first question, because parents believing that this can't work, that's going to be our biggest challenge, is convincing them that it can. And a lot of us, we're building the airplane while we're flying it. So it's tough to have confidence when you say it, because you might be experiencing this for the first time. Your teachers are experiencing it for the first time. And so preparation and a lot of time partnering with your teachers and getting them confident with the technology is going to be your biggest asset. A lot of time spent, what my teachers did, and we had the time built in. We had, to be honest, we had 13 days of staff development to prepare them for that. And that's a lot. You might not have that liberty. But in that time, I would say your staff development time should really be geared around letting teachers turn on their computers and interact with each other as if, and honest, play the role and wear the hat of a teacher, wear the hat of a parent, and wear the hat of a student, and interact back and forth, and try some of the programs. If you were on with us a month ago, we talked about some of the interactive programs and extensions that can be used to engage students. Our teachers needed a lot of time to interact with those. And if you have teachers that hate to fail and hate to be embarrassed on a screen, this is very tough for them. And so what I would do when I was as the principal, when I would model these things, I would tell them, this is maybe the second time I'm trying this. I need you to walk through this with me. And allowing yourself to not know something in front of everybody is powerful. I found that, I was doing a Google Meet and I was doing attendance, and it just wasn't working. And I found out later that Google had to go and update that. And so I let them know, like, this, I don't hold this. This is all new for us. You just want to get through those problems and troubleshoot those before you get in front of students. And if you've already had some problems, now's the time to address them, because the better the product is, the students, I find, are fine. They just love you and they love your teachers and they want to be with you. So that kind of can calm your nerves. The students are typically the last to complain. They just love being with us and they love learning. It's making sure, many of you are you have the stress of trying to make your community believe in what you're doing and feel like it's going to be the best thing to prepare them for higher learning. And so the amount of stress on you as a teacher or an administrator is going to be the highest maybe of your career. And I think you got to be prepared for that and know that that's normal.
Well, Danny, you just mentioned that you've been in school for a week now, and I heard the 13 days of preparation. And the other thing that I heard was your most recent idea of modeling to each other, have the teachers together play the role of a student, play the role of a parent, ask questions and so forth, which gives them a chance to iron out their questions in a little more safe environment than when the actual thing is. As I mentioned just a little bit ago, what Dr. Jake and I do every time we've done this, we're always online with the presenter for at least 30 minutes before you all come in line, is because we want to make sure that we're very comfortable with what we're doing. We want to make sure we understand the procedure and so forth. So my question, Danny, this might be a hard question, but yeah, I love hard questions. After you've done all this, you still have some negative nannies, we call them. You still have some people who just will not accept what you're doing. What do you do, Danny? I'm sure you've had that. And I'm sure that many of these people have it, because the questions keep coming up about parents not wanting online, they don't feel it's quality, etc. What do you do, Danny, with these people who are just immovable?
Well, the nice thing about a school is everybody's, your staff is in it with you, and they want to win, and they want to be exceptional. And you as the school leader, as an educational leader, or you as a teacher, or whatever your role is in that school, it's equal right now, because everybody's learning at the same pace. This is new to most of us. And so what we do is we communicate a lot. So if I know that a parent doesn't understand the schedule, and we have some very wealthy parents in our community that are highly educated. I had a parent that was complaining about our schedule. They just said, this schedule's confusing. It looks like my kindergartner's supposed to be in school for 7 hours straight. And I would call those. So when parents, if a teacher was having an issue that I knew they could solve, I would let them know directly, and they would call the parent right away. The best remedy is for you to have an audience with that parent, no matter what the issue is. And even if you feel like you can't solve it right away, giving them an audience, letting them be heard, and understanding the why of what you're doing. Because there's nothing that's going on in your building where I'm sure you haven't thought about the why, like, why did I do this? And once parents know why you did it, because you've had to think through so many little anomalies, the little nuances of what you're doing, you're well prepared for those discussions. When a parent calls and they understand why you care for their child and why you did what you did, they're usually fine. When I explain that schedule, and I'll show you our schedule here in a minute, they understand how much freedom is in that schedule for them to operate. Whether it's you're going to watch a live session, or you're a parent that works all day and you're not going to be with your child, you have an opportunity to watch these videos, just like Dr. Jake Frankham is recording right now. I could go watch this later and process it in the evening. And what we've done is that we make sure that parents know that you don't have to hold the stress of trying to have a full day of instruction. You can watch it in the evening, you can watch it on the weekend. And we have a pretty liberal way of, we have a pretty simple way of getting attendance. Parent has to interact with the teacher. The student has to enter a live session or share homework. So those three things could quickly get you attendance and get that stress off the parent. Parent wants to know that, do you know that my child was there, and they're counted for attendance? So that's the biggest thing, to answer your question, Dr. Lindley, is just communicating as quickly as possible. The minute a problem is festering, making sure you call right away and show a parent, oh, this is how you navigate to my class, or this is, why the schedule looks like this. Communication in real time has been the key for us. There was not one concern that we didn't address within probably 10 or 15 minutes, and with staff.
When I was principal, there were a couple of times I had this kind of a parent who just, no matter what you do, it's not good enough. So, and when I felt it appropriate, just said, how would you do it differently? Or do you have some suggestions for us as to how we can improve this? And sometimes bringing them along that way might help them understand better what you just explained. Great.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly what happened for me. The gentleman I called to talk about the schedule that we published, he works for the MGM Grand Casino, and he's in marketing. And he just said to me, he says, Mr. Eichelberger, I appreciate what you've done, and what you've done by calling me has changed my perspective, and it'll change everybody's perspective in this neighborhood because you took the time to do it. And he goes, your teachers need to understand the schedule as deeply as you do. And it was an opportunity. School hadn't started yet. I got to bring them back in and review that so that every time that schedule was explained, students knew they could explain it to parents and students more effectively.
So, Mr. Danny, my question is you've talked a lot about how communication is so important, and marketing your school and making sure that they know the procedures, the protocols. And you've also talked about how structure can be the most important thing in making sure that this is successful. Do you want to talk a little bit about how to set up an effective structure of your educational program during this pandemic?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to just share a screen, and I have a small presentation that has a few slides I think are important. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. This particular slide, it talks about school culture. And if you can follow along with me, one of the things that I found, and I'm going to skip to my schedule really quickly. This is our school schedule. And the one thing that I wanted to do before anybody started prescribing what we have to do, and no, you don't have to take a picture if you want. I know that Mr. Jacob was going to share this with everybody. The schedule that we did, we modified. It allowed time each day for a live lesson. And when the teachers do their live lesson every day, they record that and they share that with families, because not every family can be in the session in real time. And they share those shared segments, those reviewed segments every day at the same time, so that parents can access that, and that takes stress away from parents. And so in a simple format for us, there's obviously the English language arts reading, there's science, social studies, and there's math, and you'll see those. And those start at specific times. The biggest bonus we did, and what we did was we changed our schedule, and I'm sorry if you cannot see it, but on Friday, we have our specials. They come in and work that day, and they do every lesson for PE, math, physical education, library, and art. They do those sessions, and music all through the day. So students get full exposure to that. And a lot of people ask, well, why wouldn't you just keep a normal schedule? Because for us, if we go back to a modified schedule, we call a hybrid, if you were to come back to school for a couple days a week and have to stay at home for a few days a week, this schedule is built that on Monday and Wednesday, all the major standards of the grade level are addressed. Tuesday and Thursday are supporting clusters of curriculum and standards. And then there's pullouts in groups and review and time for assessment. So the way our schedule works, Monday, we hit it really hard. We have all the new curriculum. Tuesday, we review. Wednesday, we hit it hard with new curriculum. Thursday, we review. And then Friday, it gives everybody a chance to just breathe. It's all kind of like your fun specialist options, the library and the art and the PE and the music. So that's how we built our schedule. A lot of principals saw our schedule in the shared drive and they tried to mirror it. So this schedule caught on with a lot of principals. But it comes with its struggles. There's no perfect schedule. The struggle with this, and what this parent was saying, is when they see this schedule, as a parent, you think you're going to be in those sessions an hour each time, and that's a lot of time, especially for like a pre-K or first grader, what we've automatically had to do, and we've had to be good about letting teachers teach the lesson, give opportunities, and almost all of our kindergartners have a parent with them or a day, they're in a daycare facility. So they have an adult with them. They can support the learning. But we don't want to burn our teachers out, because this schedule would quickly burn a teacher out if they were to be in every session all day. And that's what happened to us within our first week. And we'll have to make adjustments next week. So that schedule for us, to me, setting the schedule sets the tone of learning. And right away, it let everyone know that this doesn't look anything like the spring. Spring was very loose. We weren't prepared, and we didn't have like a really good handle on that as a public education system. We had to get we spent our first weeks making sure that every student had a Chromebook and computers and technology. So this became very important to start this year correctly and have a schedule that really worked for everybody.
Now, Mr. Danny, how does this work with some of the younger kids that you have? And this is for grade 3. Is this very similar to kindergarten? Because there's always been a lot of questions about how do we best engage our preschool kids, our kindergarten students, and not burn them out too. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so what the quickest lesson that we've learned in this week was, again, and I'm going to make this sort of one of our tips to limit stress. Number 2 here, I say set boundaries for communication. You're going to have to let parents and students know, because they're waiting there and they're excited, but they need to know what the objective is and what they're trying to learn. And then you need to set boundaries about how long you're going to be within that session and what it means to be successful. Because if not, there just is a sense with learning, like we could be there nonstop. And so nobody will exit the session. So you really got to be clear as a teacher, here's my expectations, here's the standard, here's how long I'm going to be with you in this session. Because if you don't, until we get out of the situation, it sounds great now, but what's happening is students are really burning out, and it's way too much time in front of a screen. If you're a pre-K, kinder, first or second, if you were to follow that schedule and we didn't communicate with you when the session was actually done, you would be on the computer for closer to 3 hours instead of really what we're talking about, an hour and a half tops. So communicating that's super important.
You said one other thing that I think is really kind of interesting, and I thought about it when you said it. By recording these lessons, parents, even if they're not participating at the time, they have a chance to see what happened later on, even though it's not during the lesson itself. And that's an opening that we have rarely had in schools in our regular system. And now parents can actually see what is happening.
Yeah, and I think it's made, we've set up, if you can kind of see behind me, I have one of those ring lights, and the lighting is a little bit better. I mean, we're finding ourselves on screen more than we've ever had in our life. And our teachers have been good about setting up an environment that works well. They have all their instructional tools with them. And they're putting together a really polished product, which I think the thing that we're getting out of this is that teachers are having to really think about minimizing distractions and putting forth the best content without any fluff. We've told them, those things you love to teach, or those are great, but right now we're trying to hit the standards. So anything that's non-essential, keep it tight and keep your instruction very specific to the standards, and then get out of that session. Some of those things that teachers just maybe used to love to do, maybe they like to do a really long reading on a fiction novel that they love. Those things are great, but we really have to jump into the standards and decide how to drive instruction at a better capacity, because we have just this more limited time.
Mr. Danny, I wanted to ask about assessments, or assignments, where it says make assignments lower or no stakes if you're using a new platform. Is that to help people get familiar with that new platform and to build some confidence with the students and with the parents?
It is, and I think it goes back to communication. There's going to be a time when we can't fluff it. It's going to be at some point you're going to need to assess something, and we need to know what they know. But in the early stages of this, it's really important to lessen the stress on this child and on their parents, because their parents are in this for the first time. Parents are 100% linked with us in education more than ever before. So I think we need to be super clear about what level. Is this a formative? Is this a summative? And what we mean by that is, are we just testing your knowledge, or are we just trying to get to know where you're at and give you some experiences? Because sometimes in education in the classroom, we want to always keep kids on their toes, and we don't really tell them sometimes. But in fairness to the student, they really do need to know, what is the expectation? How am I being graded on this? And what are the stakes? Is this high stakes? Is it low stakes? And the more at the beginning part we can make it low stakes and just a great learning experience, students will endure this process a lot longer.
You know, last week I shared the quotation that said something about, I might not remember what you say, and I might not remember what you do, but I will remember how you made me feel. You mentioned a little bit ago, Danny, that the students are anxious. They want to talk with their teachers because they feel good about their teachers, and they want more communication because they like their teachers. What would you suggest are some ideas that we could give these educators, some teachers, some administrators, to not only help the students feel valued, but the teachers to feel valued? I'm important. I'm an important person to my teacher. I'm an important person to my principal, my administrator, or whatever. You have some ideas on some clues that we could talk about making individuals feel valued? Because the whole idea today is to, how do we put a positive bent on this mess that we're in, that we don't have any control over much of this stuff? How do we make some positive out of this?
The best thing I did all week was on Friday, yesterday. I sent an email out to my staff, and I put in quotations every positive comment that came their way. It was specific to certain teachers. It was specific to the school. It was specific to the way we start our day. On our website, we start every day with morning announcements, just like normal. And we do skits and live active interactions. We give a thought of the day, like inspiring thought, and we give, information that's important to the school. And we start everybody there, and then they link right to their class. Those things were hugely successful, and a lot of people put a lot of work into that. I put out an email with probably close to 10, 15 positive quotes from parents, from the community, from students, anything and everything positive I could find. I put it in quotes. And I walked into every teacher's professional learning meetings, because on Friday, all the teachers have an opportunity to meet. We went into every meeting and shared those positive comments and put them and memorialized them in an email. And it was the most powerful thing we did, because teachers were feeling very tired, very stressed, defeated. And just like our first question from our friend that asked, how do we make parents comfortable with this? They feel the pressure, and they know that every time we lose a child to a private school, here, for me as a public school educator, every time a child walks out the door, that costs us $6,000. So they feel that stress. They know that if we lose a certain amount of students, we're losing a teacher. So they feel the stress just like we do as administrators, and we've got to relieve that. Now, luckily, we haven't lost, we are at the same numbers that we were pre-COVID, so we've been very lucky and very blessed. But they need they need their stress relieved, and they need you to be their cheerleader, and we all have to be each other's cheerleader. So that was probably the most powerful thing, because after a while, the money and what we make obviously we didn't get an education to get rich. We really need that confirmation that what we're doing and that our professional skills are being appreciated.
That's great, Danny. What I really like what you said is that we really need to focus on the positive and drown the negative, especially during this time, because we can get overwhelmed with all the struggles that we're going on and dealing with day to day. But if we focus on the positive, drown the negative, it's going to help create a positive culture. Because these families, they need it. Students need it, especially at this time where they're stuck in their homes. They're not able to do a lot of their regular routines. It's very, very difficult. Dave,
Yeah.
so a couple different questions about uh, the comment, the bullet point that you have in the bottom right-hand corner, where you will not recreate your classroom, but you will reinvent your classroom. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's a nice little learning curve we've had this week. Teachers wanted to teach at the speed and at the pace and at the level of content that they were used to prior to March 16th. For us, it was March 16th when this all happened that we were first quarantined. And it's very tough to tell a high performing blue ribbon teacher that I need you to slow down. And the message of the day we gave to students on Friday was you have to slow down to go fast. And we had to tell them, you really have to literally slow down to go fast, because we were outpacing our students and we were moving too fast and they weren't getting comfortable with just the technology side and how to maneuver between screens and to, if we gave them a link, how do I toggle into this link so that I can engage? We had to slow everybody down. That became the message from the entire school district, and it became our message here in our community was you have to split time, like the way that you used to move in real time in a classroom. Right now we're having to hit it at like 50% and get comfortable with that, because if you continue to move this fast, we might have kids that are breaking down, they're frustrated because some students are literally sitting at home with very little support, with a parent that might be working in another room, or might not have a parent at home at all. And if we move too fast, we're leaving kids behind.
I'm struck with the fact that what you're talking about here is a lot of understanding the homes that these kids come from, because they're going to come from a variety of homes. Some, as you said, they might not have a parent available to them. They might not have the up-to-date equipment and so forth. And so it's a matter of understanding. I'm going to say something that might shock a few people, but let me say it anyway. You don't teach math. You don't teach science. You don't teach English. You don't teach Arabic. You teach students. And math and science and Arabic and whatever the subject is, that's only a vehicle to teach students. And I hear you saying that, Danny, when you're talking about all these little machinations that you are doing to help make this happen. And I love the last statement you made on this slide. You reinvent your classroom. And that's sometimes remembering why we're really there. Why we're really there, and that's to teach students, because as I said earlier, they might not remember what you said, what you did, but they will remember how you feel. I remember what Mother Teresa said. She said, the good you do today might not be known tomorrow. Do it anyway. And she said, give the world the best you have. It might not be good enough, but give it anyway. So I see, well, what do you do when we're dealing with these issues? And the teacher is stressed, and I understand it. We're all stressed trying to figure out what to do. We do it anyway. We're the professionals. We're the ones who really need to inspire students.
Yeah, thank you. And I think in mirroring what you're saying, I think we all have the delicate job of knowing when to push and when to pull. And when your staff is getting a little bit stuck, for us, I feel like in our part of the city, people have just been stuck on frustration. And I've had to tell teachers, we can't make excuses for the fact that we're going to educate children and we're going to give them experiences throughout the day. So some parents have just thought, oh, this is too much. I can't be on this long, but we are trying to remind parents that we want your child to have the stamina that they would have to work, through a normal day. We don't want to lose that. We're not trying to leave those things behind, but we can do it differently. We can reinvent it. We can, if we present really clean lessons, really tight, and we give you the right support, this is much more of a competency-based learning environment. So if a child is ready and has the information, they can move on and accelerate. And a lot of teachers have created extension links to support learners. So in some ways, I think when we talk about reinventing our classroom, we have had to think through deeply about what experience we're giving and what are the optics of my virtual classroom, so that the developmental learner that's struggling has my support, but the student that's ready to run, they have access to tools to keep them moving quickly. And we're asking so much of teachers, but because they are videotaping and because they're memorializing the work they're doing, they'll have these forever. And when it's done at that high of a level, I think that's starting to give, in a few weeks, I think teachers are really going to start to have some stamina and some pride in what they've done. And it'll be reproducible much more than the old paper pencil, standard, lesson plans.
Well, Danny, we're getting questions about setting up their school program. Since it's such a new program, everyone is so used to doing this face-to-face school program, but now schools are faced to setting up these distance-based programs, whether it's paper-based or virtually based. They're having to do it very, very quickly, almost overnight. And I mean, you've been working on it for the past couple of weeks, maybe even the past couple of months, refining what you started in the spring and making it even better, and then tweaking it as you go. Do you have any thoughts or ideas as you're kind of redeveloping a whole new school program in very little time?
Well, the initial message for us to our teachers, obviously there are demands put on us from our system. From our Clark County School District has some demands, and they have a platform we have to use. It's a platform called Canvas, and that's how students access their learning environment. They have to go through a couple little walls, like they call it Clever and then Canvas. And so that was frustrating for teachers, and because they were very, very competent with Google Classroom, with all the Google suite. That's something we've been very comfortable with. And when we told them at the beginning of this training that they were going to have to change their format, that was a struggle for them. So depending on what format and what framework you're going to use for your virtual learning, that's going to be a barrier. So they're going to have to get your teachers comfortable with that. And, but I tried to calm their nerves. I had someone that had worked in this format for 2 years. She was a virtual teacher for 2 years. So she'd been using the program. She came and spoke to my staff, and she walked them through the process. So find someone in your community that's, very, very adept at using the tools you're using, and let them model that in front of your staff. And what this teacher said was, she says, I've been doing this for 2 years, and I had an entire summer to prepare for this. And when I told my teachers that, it helps set the expectation. I don't expect them to be, professional, know every nuance of that program. Here's someone that's been doing it for 2 years and said, I had 3 months to set this up. So our teachers really had truly less than 10 days, because 3 of those days were just, managerial things. So that was important. That relieved their stress, that they saw a professional that's really, really proficient, knowing what their time scale was. The other is, getting to a place where at the end of the day, we have great teachers. We just want them to be able to access students and provide the best lesson possible. So try to clear out the barriers for them. Once they get past the fact that there's some new digital competency that they need to have, then you just get back to the basics, which is, you're a great teacher and you have great strategies for reaching students. we just need to add a little tool into your teacher tools every week that make you a little bit better at engaging students and checking for understanding and working with students in a virtual platform. Don't give them too much to bite off at first. I would only put 1 or 2 new strategies in front of them a week. Other than that, you're just going to overwhelm them. So we have to be their gatekeeper and guide to like not throw too much at them so that they feel successful and they walk in with a lot of confidence during this first couple weeks.
Okay, you said something that reminded me when I was working for the Department of Education and I was visiting schools in our state. I visited this one school and was talking with the superintendent. We were just having a general conversation, and he told me that he had been invited to the 25th class reunion of one of the classes when he had been a teacher, and he was invited to come to the reunion. And this one a girl came up to him and she called him by name and she said, "You all always remember, you're the best chemistry teacher I ever had." And he thanked her. And then he whispered to me and said, "I didn't teach chemistry. I taught English." The importance of the relationship with the teacher to the students cannot be overemphasized. I didn't teach chemistry. He didn't tell her. He said, "I taught English." But that was interesting.
Absolutely. And everyone, the Ministry of Education or whatever your format that they're pushing through you, that try to lighten that load. I would just tell you, teachers have been very stressed about doing something and trying something new so quickly with such a quick turnaround. And they feel like in their mind, they're on the biggest stage of their life because it's not just students watching them now. There's parents. And for most of you, parents that are paying their hard-earned money to make sure that they are at great schools. So that's another, the layers of stress for teachers is the highest I've ever seen. And I have to warn you that in my first week back with our teachers teaching, there were a lot of tears. There was a lot of stress. And you just have to be everybody has to be everybody's cheerleader and get them through it because they have their own family stress, their own children, and they're trying to be successful. And they know we all know the pressure. So I can't say it enough. And I'm not that much of a mushy, touchy-feely, but I will tell you, if you don't consider the social, emotional welfare of your staff right now and your children and your parents, we will have missed a big opportunity.
And Danny, I just want to add on to that a little bit because I'm in a situation with my schools where we're actually bringing back over 90% of our students. We're in a part of the country where it is a little bit more safe, but there are so many protocols that we have to put in place to keep everyone healthy and safe that the stress level is still very, very high with those teachers. And so those countries and those schools that are looking at bringing those students back, please be cognizant of that and be supportive of them. Danny, one last question we ask all of our presenters is how do you think going through this pandemic is going to change the future of education? What is it going to look like?
I think that we're already seeing, we're all forced into a position where we had to get comfortable with technology. I think about just this meeting we're sitting in right now. I can see all of our friends from across the globe in real time. It's late for you, it's earlier for us, but just the fact that the effectiveness of this, the efficiency of which this technology is allowing us. I've got more faith in technology than I probably had before. There are, your staff, their time is very valuable. Sometimes I'm thinking with my own staff, even when the world goes back to what I consider normal, there will still be times where just a video format will be the most effective way to get information to a large group of people. I thought last I saw we had almost 350 people on this live session. We're reaching that many people and everyone's sort of in the comfort of their workspace or their home. That is priceless because we cherish each other's time. We respect each other as professionals. And I know that teachers will feel that, but also even with that, some of the work I saw in our primary grades, I was watching our primary grades do assessments, and the sound quality was good, and we could see, you could, have the scripted words come on, and I could see students talking, and the letters were big, and they were doing letter sounds and numbers, and I was watching that in real time, and it was as effective as a normal classroom setting, because the work was at the forefront, and the teacher could hear their sounds, they could hear the language development, and they could develop a sense of where they were at and assess students very effectively. So, just every one of us are probably seeing things with technology that we didn't see before. And I'm thinking that this will be something that will stick with us well beyond this pandemic. And it's something that will make us more effective educators.
Good. Thank you, Danny. Thank you all for participating. Just a couple of reminders. Number one, there was a question about the coming workshops. The first one will be September 19th, and we will do it at the same time. But please, if you have any requests for a topic that you would like to have us cover in the future workshops, please let us know. And don't forget the dates which Dr. Jake shared with you: the Olympiad starting October 10th, the International Conference March 3rd through 5th in Lausanne, Switzerland. And let us remember also that we are a group of people who really do need each other. We need you, you need us, we all need each other. And let's not forget either, I shared it with one of the other workshops. If you have not had a chance yet to bring home everything that we have talked about today, go on the internet and do a Google search for Teddy, T-E-D-D-Y, Stoddard, S-T-O-D-D-A-R-D. If you ever want to know the effect that you have as a teacher, that should help you. I promise you, if you're like me, you'll not read through it without getting tears in your eyes, because you realize the importance of the life of a teacher and educator. See, all about us are students. They are the makers of history and the builders of tomorrow. If we can have some part in guiding them on the trail of life onto the high road of noble character and constructive citizenship, it may be the most, you and I might be the most important people in their lives, the most important person in your communities. For 100 years from now, it will not matter what your bank account was. It will not matter the kind of house you lived in. It will not matter the kind of car you drove. But the world will be different, because you and I were important in the lives of our students. Please, let's not forget that. We are important in the lives of our students, and that's what's really going to last. So thank you all for being with us today. As I mentioned, these are all recorded. You can come back and play them anytime. We hope that you share them with the staff at your school, and if there's anything helpful, that you will certainly put those to use. And for those of you who will be with us, we will look forward to seeing you on September 19th. And thank you for your time today, and it's been a joy to be with you.
Thank you all. The certificates will be mailed out in the next week. If you do not receive them within a week, please email me and we'll get those out to you. We have so many people, and there have been some email addresses that were incorrect. Everyone will receive an email in just a few minutes on how to do the workshop survey and the attendance form. So look for that. I also put it in the chat. But again, thank you everyone. And please, as we get into this new school year, and like we've been emphasizing, stay positive.